Get ready for Siebel 22 with the most up-to-date modular training course available. Learn more with clear, precise instructor presentations.
Team 2 has a mid-level release they want to push to integration test and then incrementally migrate that content to the test database.
Learn better with comprehensive exercises and demonstrations.
Now the next step to be executed is the business service, and we can click Simulate Next. This executes the business service and we can inspect the output in the workflow process data panel.
Learn faster with high-quality course materials. Go to SiebelHub.com and start learning today.
Okay, welcome to this first Siebel Friday in the 2022, and we have plenty of things to catch up from last year since we didn't have a Siebel Friday on New Year's Eve. It was just not the day. And so we have the first one this year covering two months and the two Oracle releases of Siebel CRM. So we start, the agenda is roughly as well. Let's take a look at the two updates that have been delivered since the last Siebel Friday. And let's take a special look at one of the features, the OAuth support for REST API. That is what Nick will show us live on his system. And then there's a little bit of update from the Siebel Hub, as we have some nice new features there. But let's do one by one. So December update 21.12, there were lots of features, actually, lots of announcements. The REST API got a lot of attention, which I like in particular. The attachment support. I'm going to try a demo on that, so bear with me. And we have the official product administration REST API has arrived. And there's a loyalty, an update for the loyalty applications. I'm no loyalty expert, but there's a new kind of applet and business component in there. Also, the OAuth authentication is now fully documented for inbound REST API. So, and only for inbound REST API. Don't get too excited. There's no OAuth authentication right for. Somebody's typing really hard. Can you mute your microphone, please? That's not to have that background noise. Thanks. So inbound OAuth authentication is just for REST API at the moment. There's REST API reference files. Enterprise cache is now officially obsolete. And there's various other enhancements, though. Of course, we have slides for those.
Alex.
Yeah, hi, Duncan.
Just, you were very specific there about OAuth, but, because there are methods of connecting OAuth type systems to the standard login, it is possible with a few little tricks to federate the login to Siebel, through Google or Facebook logins. Or
right. I got a blog post out about that. Yeah.
Sure.
So yes, you can.
You were being very specific there, and I wasn't. You said it wasn't available for something. Then you got cut off and restarted. And
yeah, sorry. So just to make clear, let's say as an option in the AI profile, to pick OAuth is just for the REST API. It's for the object manager, you still have single sign-on. So if you manage to get the user ID in the header with whatever means you have, yes, then including OAuth and other stuff. Yeah. So, okay, thanks, Duncan, for clarifying that. And attachments with inbound REST API. That was really like missing from the REST API since it has started in IP16. Because you just couldn't do it. You had to use, for example, SOAP, XML. So now there you can get and post or put attachments. And let's start with a little demo. So I've fired up a good old Postman here. And here's the yeah, typical get URLs. I'm getting a specific account. So I've got an account which has an attachment. Let's see if that's true. So here it is. So I've uploaded an attachment here, JPEG file. And let's go back to Postman, try to get the account attachment. So you see that this uses, of course, the base integration object for REST. So base account, and base account has the account attachment business component, as it has all the business components really. So that is, of course, a prerequisite. You have to have that business component here. Let's see what happens when we get that. Well, we get something. So you would have expected maybe, wow, the files, but it's not. So you get the attachment data. So of the attachment record. And what's actually new is there's one field. I call it the attachment ID. So in account attachment, it's account attachment ID. It has different names. And that is a URL. And if you take that whole URL, notice that has one specific field at the end after the row ID of the attachment. So that's the URL to retrieve the attachment. So I put it here already in the next tab. And let's see if it's another GET request that I do. And Postman can even show the image, right? So that's quite cool. It's just, if you put that in your browser, you get a download. So Postman downloads the file, shows it, nice enough. So that's getting attachments. That's a real file. That if you look into the headers, it's well, tells everybody who wants to know it. It's a JPEG image file, so the browser can, for example, arrange for download. But what if you want to stay with base64, right? So there's another way of doing this. So here I'm getting the attachments again. So this would be all the attachments of the account. But this time there's a new parameter, inline attachment. I set it to true. And if I sent that, when I sent it the first time, I was like, doesn't work, right? I get an empty body as a response. And I don't really know why, but you have to actually send an empty body. So that's how it works. So let's say just jokingly, Siebel tells me the secret to get the attachment in base64. So that secret I pass in as the body, an empty JSON. And now if I send it, okay, there it is. So we have a big, ugly base64 encoding of the whole file. Of course, that's a lot of base64 here. So yeah, base64 is fully supported, like I would expect from Siebel. And base64 is what you have to use for actually uploading attachments. So I prepared something up front. So I took a file and ran it through a base64 encoder. And you see what I'm preparing here is a put statement for this account on the account attachment BC, basically. Insert a new record with, or upsert, put is upsert. That's the file name, that's the extension, and account attachment ID is the base64 string. Okay, let's see. That works. All right, I get a 200 response, and I get the row ID of the new attachment, likely. Now let's see, that should be now visible here. So let me reload. Yep, there's the file, and is it real attachment? So let's use view files maybe. And there you go. Siebel Hub logo uploaded by the REST API. Very cool. Okay, it was a quick demo. Any comments, any questions? Did you have any chance of trying that in your environment or implementing it? Any, applause? It's cool.
Yeah, it's good to have a missing feature filled.
Okay. Well, it doesn't impress you much, I guess. Okay.
You might get more excited in a few months when we provide access to workflows via REST.
Okay, is that a new thing?
Yep, that'll be out in a couple months. I think it's either 22.3 or 22.4.
Okay.
Mm,
So
that is exciting.
okay.
Oh, there you are, Gary.
So
I could already do that, Brian, by invoking them via a business service.
Yeah, but you can do it directly now. Carrie,
Thank
you
you.
can fill that in.
Oh, okay, nice to hear. Yeah.
FYI, Carrie MacArthur from Oracle, I asked Alex to extend the invitation for him. He's taking over most of my product management roles for tools, web tools, workflow, all this stuff that I always talk about. And as I am now managing that team, and I can't do both. So he, I think most of you have probably encountered him in some way or another. He's been at Oracle nearly probably 20 years as much as I have. So Carrie, can you correct me on the date or the release for the workflow endpoint?
It's around March.
Okay, so just a few weeks, real. I'm guessing.
And you're right, Duncan. Of course, you can with by wrapping it in a business service, but this allows you to leave that step out.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
So it's going to be just like /workflow, and just guessing.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh yeah, really.
Yep.
Okay, cool thing. Well, yeah, the REST API has a lot of attention, obviously, and the famous Oracle side integration with Siebel, DX4C, has now also, caused one additional enhancement, or actually a group of, let's call it optimized or enhanced business services and integration objects that are put into your repository. And so you can now accomplish, I would say most of the tasks related to product administration and catalog administration. And that is documented as a separate, REST API, but under the hood, it's just business services and integration objects. So but it's a great enhancement so that there's an official product administration REST API now that the DX4C leverages, and customers without using DX4C can leverage it as well. And then there's the OAuth support. So I'm going to skip that in favor of Nick's presentation later. And so I have a few slides there. Oh, this one's animated, but it's coming later. And the bookshelf as well has two new entries under the REST API guide. You find a download of two zip files. One is the Open API specification for the product administration REST API. So as Swagger files, and even a Postman collection is there. So not sure if this is like a start of something that we will see more in the future, but it's also, I like that a lot. So you can try out the API in Postman. Okay, and one of my pet peeves with Siebel for a long time was the constraint engine, the advanced constraint engine. That's the thing when you are using Siebel configurator, and basically in IP17, Oracle announced there is a developer preview for the advanced constraint engine, which should have replaced the iLog engine, and it actually did not. So more than 1 year ago, the ACT was removed from the product, was obsolete, and now the bookshelf has been updated with information that enterprise cache, where ACT was the only use case for, is no longer supported. So that is now removed from the product. And some minor but also interesting changes. The workflow monitoring configuration, I think it's now in its final form, we could say. It had two applets, one list on top, and a form applet for setting the monitoring level, for example. Made it hard for people to query for, let's say, all the workflows where you have a level of 4. And this is now moved to the list applet. So now it looks more like the original back before the workflow architecture changes. So now you can have one single list applet, so you can sort and query. All right. And one thing I noticed when you look deep into the log files that post-install database update does, there is the removal of, for lack of a better word, I'm not a native speaker, call it racial labels. We have this master-slave terminology that is no longer really acceptable. And there's an update to LOVs, at least in the UCM, the customer master LOVs, that is replaced by a new terminology, golden contributor.
Yeah, FYI, Alex, on that, we made those changes across the product, not just LOV. We've tried to find all the instances in Bookshelf and in any other aspect of the application that we can find. There will remain some on older training classes, but any training classes going forward will also remove those.
Cool.
The hardest one we found, I want to float it past this group because I think it's good, if I may, is a replacement for the term black box.
Yeah.
And so the best thing which is an entire, theory. It's not just like it's a term we throw around, right? It's like a documented thing that people have studied and defined. So the best I could come up with is an opaque box. Would that make sense to people?
Opaque box. Okay.
Opaque.
Okay.
Opaque being the opposite of transparent.
Yeah.
Well, a white box becomes a transparent box. You can see what's going on inside.
Yeah. Any ideas from the crowd?
Start with what's the black box doing?
It's a recorder.
No, not that kind of black box.
It's like when a piece of software is black boxed.
Yeah. Yes. So like you don't know how it works inside, but you know if you feed in 10, you get 20. You don't know how it does it. You don't know if it says 10 times 2 or 10 plus 10. Not that it matters, but just as a simple example, you just know you get 20 back. And so that type of testing, black box testing, we want to get rid of that phrase. And so I'm trying to find something appropriate.
Okay,
But we're not talking about flight data recorders, like the so-called black box on planes, which is actually orange anyway.
Which orange? Yeah. Okay, maybe if somebody has an idea, put it in the chat.
Yeah, or just email it to me. By now you must all have my address. I just, I kind of want to figure out something that'll meet Oracle's intentions on this with respect to the to inclusivity and diversity, which is our overall term for this initiative. But at the same time, that particular one's really tough.
What about closed container?
Okay, maybe. I don't know. I'll figure out. I figured this group has so much experience that somebody might, have encountered another word or would lend feedback into, what would make sense without someone having to put in parentheses what we used to call a black box.
Private subroutine.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, this one just strikes me in particular as I imagined. I haven't found a customer, but maybe using some eScript or in a workflow, referring to the old values. So after the update, the workflow or eScript would be broken. So that is just one thought I had. So it just maybe proposing it might be good to document this so people are aware that this happens in the database. Okay, and on another note, keyboard shortcuts for the WebTool script debugger have been introduced in 21.12, so they're now even closer to 100% parity with Siebel tools. Albeit they're different keyboard shortcuts, but that's because the browser does not play well with some of these, like F5, obviously. So I've been there. And yeah, the infamous Log4j, Log4Shell vulnerability that was what kept us awake in December and January. 2112 is already fixed in some respect. Not all of the vulnerabilities are fixed, but it has the 2.16, the Log4j libraries, and 22.1 has the 2.17. So that's, of course,
.1.
22.1.
217.1.
217.1, yeah.
217.1, which fixes the fourth vulnerability that was identified.
So they found as people all around the planet were fixing stuff, the team of Log4j found more vulnerabilities and fixed them. Yeah, but I talked to a customer the other day and said, okay, because they're on 20.6, how do you get along? The security team demanded, of course, that they fix it. So they started fixing it following the Oracle support document, which at that time told them to fix the pattern. And when they looked it up the next time, it told them, no, don't fix the pattern, remove the classes. So they had like 54 machines to take care of. And were pretty, spent like 2 days. All right. So yeah, they as just mentioned, the 22.1 just released a few days ago addresses hopefully all of the vulnerabilities in that respect. And there's not so much features here. Just one of the major features that is announced is the crowd twist integration. So I'm not a crowd twist user, but I looked it up what crowd twist is. So it's basically things you can do with loyalty program members, like capturing social activities when they fill in like surveys and stuff, and also point transactions, etc. So that's layman's terms. I'm not a loyalty specialist. And the integration is from Siebel to CrowdTwist, like updating when a member is registered in Siebel, it's also registered in CrowdTwist automatically. And this is what I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the first that uses OIC, the Oracle Integration Cloud. Because the first I've seen was the CSV export for, forgot the name, the other thing. And that was just pushing out CSV files, and the other thing picked it up. So CrowdTwist is more, let's say, sophisticated in that term. And I found a lot of workflows are imported with the repository upgrade that use the outbound REST API, so data maps. So it's quite a good example, actually, if you want to know how to integrate Siebel with a cloud environment, outbound REST. That's quite a good idea to look at these workflows, even if you don't have loyalty. Okay, there's the Log4j again, so let's not talk about it anymore. And the little debug server that we have in development environments for supporting the web tools, script debugger and workflow simulator. That one is actually, when I did the update on my environments, it could not be started anymore. And there is a note in the release notes to actually have on Windows only, obviously, where you have that service. You have to delete and recreate the service because of the Log4j as well. But it also has new functionality now. So the new functionality is that you can have the service running on multiple Siebel server machines. If you have the luxury of multiple Siebel servers in a development environment. Okay, so yeah, that's it for summary of 2112, 22.1. Anything I missed?
An FYI, when I had a previous install of CTMS or Siebel, like in 2105, I had classes that had the Log4j in it, and the 2112 did not change those classes. It left the vulnerability ones out there. But 22.1, Brian, they did clean up all the directories so that there are no vulnerable ones left out there in any of the directories.
Okay, so sounds like 22.1 is really the one to go for when you want to address Log4j.
And just a note, we're trying to do that elsewhere. If there's other older versions of something that are still just floating around, even unused, we're just trying to get them out of there just to clean things up. And in this particular case, those directories were completely inaccessible from running code, so they couldn't do anything. But also, we understand that our customers and partners would be concerned just seeing they exist. So we're making an effort to go through and clean up all the old versions that might be just sitting around doing nothing.
Good job on the 22.1 release. It did a good job.
Yeah. All right. So, well, I think, yeah, Nick, you're ready for the demo on OAuth?
Sure.
Sure. So, yeah, thanks to Nick from Duke. He has prepared a demo and presentation on the OAuth support for REST. I'll make you presenter so you can start. Okay, there you go.
Let's see which one. Share this one. So you can see my screen, I gather. So I had a need. I had a DBA. It did not like the idea of using basic auth for a REST inbound because our developer or our partner would have to know the database user ID and password, which has the SSE role, which really makes them God when it comes to knowing those roles. So she didn't trust them at all. So we had to come up with using OAuth, and over the last few months, we finally figured out how it all works. The 2112 got it working just how we needed. Documentation was still missing in places. It took a while to work with the Oracle support and the development teams to figure out what it was I was missing and how to get stuff, and then some trial and error also happened. So I put together a PDF that had everything I could think of that I might need to pass on to my develop. We're a two-team support team, and my developer has no idea about anything on the infrastructure side. So I had to write it in such a way that at least everything was there for them or her. And so basically I came up with this document. It kind of pulls stuff from Bookshelf, Knowledge Base, my own experiences, some stuff from Alex, some stuff from Brian, some stuff from the support team, and try to put it all in one document. And it goes through all the stuff that I've come up with. What REST PIR, return codes, how to set up, how I set up OAuth on my system. You'll have to do yours on yours a different way. I'm sure. I'm not sure how other systems do it. Some examples of how things work. This was the latest version I got from Knowledge Base. This document here. It shows the flows a little better and what's getting passed back and forth. That helped a lot out in determining how to use Postman, because I'm still new to Postman and all these things are really strange to me. So learned a lot there. Showed how the authorization flow works from my point of view, getting all the things that have to be set up inside Siebel, the object managers, the REST, the users inside, the responsibilities, how to set up those, how the access is done. So one of the things you have to do is create the responsibility and then give them the access to the business service that you're running. And actually, I'm doing the workflow through a business service function that is going to gratefully be acceptable when 22.3 or 4 comes out, and I just call the workflow instead. Then you assign the responsibility to a user, and you can do it in person. You don't have to do it as an employee. I've actually set up one employee that's an LDAP user and one employee that has no LDAP whatsoever, which is the way I would prefer to do it, because they can't get into the application at all whatsoever without with LDAP, so, or any other way, or even as a database, because they're not even a database access user, so they have no access at all to the system, which is definitely a preferred way. Need some more ways of how I've configured the REST methods and making sure that the access is available. And you see I got step-by-step instructions on what, so my user wants to do it. Now I'm a Linux user, so I use mostly almost Linux everywhere. So Windows, I'd have to think I got changed the cursor, the arrows, the slashes the other way. Or is it, no, I got changed Unix ones the other way. And I talk about the application profile, all the things that you need. And this is from Bookshelf. And then configuring the AOMs and how to do that, what you have to set up for the LDAP. I created a separate LDAP security adapter because
Nick,
we do use LDAP for login to the application.
Nick, if I may, just can you scroll up a little bit? There's something important to understand. It's that the object manager has to be configured for SSO. It says in it says here. So it must be configured for SSO. Otherwise, that doesn't work.
Right.
Yeah, it's a prerequisite. Yeah.
So what I do is I configured the REST first. And basically it's, you set it up the same as you would LDAP. I just give it a different name so I could keep them separate. And then on the OM, well, so yeah. So the parameters are set to single sign-on and the trust token. Well, I'll show you where we do that. Then I configure a separate EOM EA object manager that I'll use in the SMC profiles. And we set the LDAP adapter, and so it points to that particular one. So because it's a single sign-on, and my LDAP currently doesn't use single sign-on, that's why I had to create a separate LDAP. Okay, so now for me, we use OAuth, and they have their own pre-can way of doing it. And this is the information that I use when I set the OAuth up on ours. I'll show you that in a second. And here's the interface profile, what we'll need from to talk back to the OAuth. So there's 3 ways you can create the new profile. You can clone it, create a new one, or modify an existing. I ended up creating or cloning because it's easier. And then I changed the application interface, the authorization area, right here. So I have the introspect URL, the service, the client ID, the client secret, This is the trust token that goes on the LDAP REST indicator, and those have to match. And then I started creating my AIs, and I chose to use the 9600 series for all my additional AIs, so I knew that they were different when I'm doing my lookup of what's being executed on a Linux system. I have no idea how it works on a Windows system, the ports and stuff, how to investigate those, since I'm not a Windows type person. And then I did Postman testing. So first thing you got to do is take the client ID and secret and get a token. And once you get the access token, you can go over to Postman, and this is wrong because I don't use this anymore.
That's when you
Oh, take it
when
back.
you try
This
to,
is for introspect. This is
yeah,
for
when
the
you try
introspect.
to introspect, yeah.
Because so what you use your client ID and secret, and you send that over to the introspect interface, and it pulls back what we're expecting, basically the user ID and the scope. That's what you're looking for to come back. User ID and scope. And that's what gets passed back into Siebel. And then what I have running is I have a business service executing the workflow process manager. And I copied and cloned it called REST. And then I do a run process. And this is a no authorization. There is no authorization. It's just use the authorization and your bearer key. So it's no auth. And then in the body is whatever you're expecting. In my case, the workflow process is rando enroll and rest in the incoming XML, since I'm doing a XML version of it, because that's all my partner can send over. And then I get a good response back. It worked. So the additional AIs, you'll see I had to install new AIs in the root directory. Here's the normal AI, and then I created two others, rando and rest. And this is how I do my ports. You can see that I set up my additional AI ports in the 9600 range, where my original AI port's 9013 or 9000 series. And then what that does, it creates in this particular case, this would be the REST one. It creates this profile, which is a standard profile. But you have to go to the original AI root one, because this is the field you need to take, because it's pointed to the gateway. And you need to put that into your newly created AI. And when you do that, you get in my case, I set up 3 AIs underneath the application interface. And then I put in additional references. I didn't go into detail about the AI profile and how that was done. I can show you that now. Let me first show you how my OAuth is set up here at Duke. So here's the user I have. This user is not in LDAP. It is not in the database. It has only a user role, right? Then you have your hidden secret. I have my redirect URL, and you notice I'm using 9621. And then I'm using the service workflow, which is one of the ways you can do it. It's either service dot or service in the REST name. And it does not like spaces for when you set up your scope. It has to be one word. Found that out. So that's that. Let's see. So this is my application profiles. I have a REST, a rando, and in the inbound authentication, you can see I have my intro spec. And then in the inbound, I'm using the REST EAI, and I'm pointing to the 2621 port for the AI. And then once you create the profile, of course, you just add it. And you can see that I want 9611 for rando and 9621 for the rest. And then, of course, my main one is still 98011. That's a very rushed presentation, a lot of information.
Okay, great. Thanks much, Nick. Yeah.
For questions or whatever.
I'm glad to see you're up and running, Nick.
Yeah. Let me share. Let me show you the Postman running. That's
Yeah, we want to see proof.
yeah. Let me show you Postman running. So basically, I've already got them token. I did a get token, and this is the bearer token, and here's the body, and this is the line of what I'm calling. First call always takes me a long time. Then after that, they're milliseconds.
It's a cold start.
Yeah.
It's very cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it goes back to how we might warm up our OMs once they first come online. I know people have implemented different automated scripts, but that should be nice to have a way to exercise them, even if it resulted in some kind of error as a default option when starting up.
Yeah, I like that. That would be, yeah, that's a long time wish to have some parameter like, create one warm-up session. But here you go. Yeah, Nick has a response.
Mm-hmm.
So if I do it again, it'll be much quicker. First time we ever spin up this process, we always get an error. Something with the workflow itself that's been there for 8-10 years. So the first one always bombs out, but the second one always comes back with a 0. And
okay. Really cool. So there's one thing I would like to ask Nick. I know the answer, but it's interesting. There's one thing about the custom. Let's call it the custom EI object manager you created just for that purpose, and you had to set up a second AI, and there's a reason for that related to the migration application.
right. Oh yeah. So in the migration, so the migration profile, right, is going to 9011, and I use a database access for that. I didn't want to go the SSL route because this is dev and it's overkill. And so if you don't do that, then you can never get this to work.
Yeah, because the migration app only has two options for authentication. It's basic or SSO.
Right.
How
I think I commented that in the document someplace about that.
So if you have let's say you set up your regular AI to use OAuth for inbound, then the migration application cannot talk to it anymore.
Right. It just goes belly up, which is one of the reasons I needed multiple AIs so I could still use my old function of the base.
Right.
And this is when we got into all the fun stuff between development and found out that client ID and secret worked in 2110 or 11. So,
but yeah, really great presentation, and the documentation is awesome. So yeah, thanks much to Nick for this, and I think this is very valuable for everybody. Well, trying to be on the bleeding edge with Siebel integration and making it more secure.
I go 2112 in production tomorrow night.
Oh.
And 22.1 next month.
Impressive. Okay, I have some slides to talk a little bit more about the OAuth, especially the flow that Nick showed on the screenshot. But I've created for the training material we create. So Nick, you're done. That's right.
I'm done.
Okay. Sorry, I'll take over the screen.
Just the only thing left is if you want, I've shared my PDF with Alex, and you're more than free to go ask him to. Alex, you're more than welcome to share it with people.
Okay, so if that's okay with you, put it on the Siebel Hub as a blog post.
Okay.
So thanks for this. Yeah, very kind. Yeah, so we have a very good documentation out there.
And if you got any ideas how to make it better, I'm always willing to listen.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So this is one of the diagrams that is in Nick's documentation. It's from Bookshelf, and shows quite nicely the flow and what the AI expects from the OAuth server. That's basically, as Nick showed, the user ID and the scope which can be used or should be used to limit what the user can actually access in terms of the REST API. So here data.account means you can only access the account business object in the data API and all the business services that, of course, the business services are still under control by responsibility. So the service and data API are allowed and data is only account. So that scope is also interesting, of course, because you have lots of access control there. And this slide shows the flow like in slow motion. So the first communication is really from the client application, not talking to Siebel at all, but talking to the OAuth server to get the fresh token. So it has to do it unless when the token is expired or every time. And assuming everything is fine with the authentication, the OAuth server returns the token. And the client then sends the first request or the request to the AI, including that token. So Nick has shown using it in the Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, you're now using the authorization header with the bearer token?
Actually, I've tested with authorization and access token, and they both work.
Yeah, there are two ways of sending the token to the Siebel AI, but it has to be a header parameter.
Right.
And the AI then talks to the OAuth server and validates that token. And so that's that introspection URL. And if everything goes well, the token is valid, then there's the response that Nick has shown, including, among other things, the user ID and the scope. That is what the AI is looking for, really. And now the AI can initiate the session. We know that the service discovery for the first one is not shown here, to the object manager, sending the user ID, and it's missing here from the slide, the token, but not the access token from the OAuth server, but the Siebel internal trust token. And the object manager does the SSO thing, so it uses the security adapter, LDAP, or could be DBSSO, recently supported Siebel as well. So the trust token matches and the user exists, etc. So the session is opened, and then the actual request is processed and the data is returned to the AI, and now the client gets the response. So that's let's say that's the closest that I could figure out. So correct me if I'm wrong, please. So that seems to be the real flow. Okay.
Alex, one question regarding when I was working on REST API. So this is nothing, yeah. I have one question. Like when we are testing the REST API through, let's say, using a client-side business service, for example, it does not refresh the latest code changes until unless we don't hit I mean we need to use multiple user. Let's say we are using basic authentication, so sometime we need to use multiple DB username and password to get the latest code from the business service. So is that thing is resolved or it still is there?
So that's a question to the Oracle people in the room.
I mean, I experienced this, yeah.
Yeah, but what you mentioned you're using the client side business service. So that's the business services outside of the repository.
Yes, you can. So I mean imported in Siebel client, I would say.
Yeah, they're in the view in the business services screen. You have the business services that are client that we consider client side. Yeah. So they're
yeah, correct.
So I could imagine, just guesswork here, that it's some kind of caching.
Right. So that caching actually is there. So is that thing is resolved? I mean, what I used to do testing that particular code, I used to do some 2-3 DB authenticated username and password I used to have, and then hit it in some time. So like I have seen there is a parameter on the SMC which is having some kind of cache parameter where we used to maintain something like 900 seconds, which is approximately like 15 minutes. So after 15 minutes, it used to refresh.
Yeah, that's the timeout actually. No.
Yeah, that's a timeout.
Yeah, so you could play with that timeout value, because when you consider REST sessions, they inbound calls on EAI, they're very short. It's a few milliseconds or a few seconds, and that session would stay open until it times out, like for 15 minutes. And only after 15 minutes you get a fresh session. So on EAI, I don't know if that's like commonplace, but I tend to set it much shorter, like 30 seconds or 60 seconds.
Oh.
It's one way of doing it. You get a fresh session earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And
okay, sure. I mean that thing is that cache thing is resolved or not? That's what my question.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, Alex, I got one other thing I forgot about.
Yeah, sure. You want to share?
The reason I had two separate AIs out there is that I can only have one set of client ID and secrets per AI.
Oh yeah. That's another, let's call it a limitation of the AI profile. You have a one-to-one relationship between AI and REST. And the REST interface.
You'd have to create one for every pair of secrets you have, for every integration you have, for every partner you may have, or whatever.
If they cannot reuse the same, yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And you don't want to give multiple partners the same secret and ID, I don't think.
Right. Is it? I'm on thin ice here, but the REST clients are going. let me go back to here. When the REST client gets the token, it has a secret and ID. But
Right.
it doesn't have to be the same that the AI uses, right?
Yeah, well, I think so because the AI is going back to the OAuth to verify that
I think
that token that the first one had.
well, the AI is a client to the OAuth server as well, and it has a client ID and secret, but its own. So, well, Oracle people for the rescue here. I would say,
Alex,
yeah.
I don't know the answer to that.
So
Sorry.
maybe there's more. Well, Nick, you could just give it a try. No, you use a different client ID and secret for the two client applications that are here in this communication.
I don't think
I
you
have.
can.
That's why I created
don't
two
think
AIs.
you can do that.
One for one client ID and one for a different client ID. One had LDAP and the other one did not. I was testing to see if I needed my OAuth user to be an LDAP user. They don't have to be.
Okay. There was somebody said that you can't do that.
Well, you can't have more than one client ID and secret per
AI.
Per AI.
Right, but that doesn't have to be the same client ID and secret that the REST client uses, the external application, right?
Yeah, it does because they get the authorization token, and that's what we're comparing.
Yeah, that's the only way it would let them in.
If you use the same client ID and valid, I'm on thin ice here. I'm not an expert, but with OAuth,
okay. So, yeah, I mean the client ID and client secret are, the keys that let you in. So if you only have one, you can't have two different, integration systems that are talking to you using different client ID and secret because you can only have one and you don't want them to share one. And I think that's, Nick, what your fundamental finding was, correct?
Right.
Yeah. So it would be, let's say if the REST interface on the AI, like the v1.0, if you look at SOAP, you have /app, and there's an application registered in the profile, and you can have multiple applications, but only one v1.0. So maybe just that would be possible change in the future. Of course, just hypothetical.
The feedback from my engineers on this was that they feel it should really be done outside of Siebel, in the sense that you should have, some sort of web server reverse proxy in front of Siebel anyway, and that your OAuth should be handled there, not really by Siebel at all. And then, the communication from it to Siebel just comes in pre-authorized.
Right.
Does that make sense? And now that is as much detail as I can give you because I am also not an expert on this stuff.
Yeah.
But that's my understanding of what the engineers said was the right way, is to take that process of validating different users out of Siebel, and then and have it just done at the very front where they first hit a web server, and then depending on what, just like with a user, it would say, it would then authorize them, but then pass in the related user, and then you use the user for, visibility or whatever.
Which makes a lot of sense. Now I got to figure out how to do that, and I'm a Siebel guy.
No, I know, and I've asked the engineers to put something together on that. They can't do it for every OAuth platform, of course, because you don't even know what's out there in the world. But we will, but we'll at least write it up for Oracle security, whatever it's called, and we're actually going to try to ask Microsoft to see if they'll write one up for Azure, and we're hoping that with two of them, that would be enough of a direction that people could have, that even if you had some other thing, you could be able to figure it out. And if not, you could go to that company and say, hey, here's what we have for Microsoft, here's what we have for Oracle, what do we have to do on yours?
Yeah, so I got to bounce. I got a meeting I got to get to.
Okay, yeah, it's 1 hour into the meeting. Yeah, thanks much, Nick. So that was really great and helpful. Okay, and also thanks to Brian and Kerry for jumping in here in the discussion. So yeah, there's no limit on Siebel Friday, but I know you're all aching to go, and it's Friday. Just one more thing, literally, before we go. Let me just share this in a moment. So yeah, so it's 2022 as we all noticed, and Siebel 22 is out for a few days now. So with 22.1, and in respect of updates, monthly updates, there's a lot going on. There's 12 updates per year. So if you look at, let's say you've upgraded successfully to Siebel 20.1. That's 2 years already, and that's 24 updates. And what happened in all these updates, and how can I possibly keep track of that and stay up to date? And that's the goal of the Siebel Hub learning experience. And we're just about to publish this early next week. The Siebel workshop that we have had on the Siebel Hub for years, starting with Siebel IP17, is now updated to Siebel 22. So let's say all the slides and labs and recordings have been redone to match Siebel 22. Of course, 22.1, because that's what's available. So I'm going to share the URL in the chat. That's the landing page for the class. Don't worry about 2021 in the URL. It's still valid for those. And there's a trailer we have. And the unique thing about this is that we have a modular approach, and you can have recorded, you can buy in the Siebel Hub shop or even access them for free. Some of these modules are free, like the course introduction and the installation. So each of these links in that table on that page brings you to the Siebel Hub shop, where you can purchase for a very reasonable price or no price at all the module, so you can access the videos on the Siebel Hub and also purchase the course material on a module by module basis. So if you're, let's say, want to catch up on the REST API, there's a module there. If you want to catch up on usage pattern tracking, there's a module there. And the other question that you might have, okay, I'm buying this now and it's recorded in 22.1. And what happens in 2-3 months when there is an update? So this is where the monthly updates come in. And I know that you've been consuming these a lot, because that link goes to YouTube. And on YouTube, we have the Siebel Hub channel, which is, gets very positive vibes currently. And on that Siebel Hub channel is every public video, of course, is free. And that includes the monthly summaries. And if you haven't already, you can watch these summaries and get an overview of what happened in the monthly update. So if you accumulate this knowledge, you can go from any prior version, Siebel 18 to 20 or 1920. And of course, you have to watch all these videos, but it's worth it. And so, well, that's the update I wanted to give you. So we have already published, but we are publicly announcing the Siebel 22 training on the Siebel Hub in a few days. So I'm preaching to the wrong crowd. I know that, because you're all on the bleeding edge of Siebel. But if you know somebody or know a system integrator or have a team that needs some updates on their Siebel knowledge, for example, you're doing an upgrade, you just started to upgrade, then contact me. There's contact links all over the page. But I'm happy, of course, to type my email address into the chat, so you can contact me for a free call, free consultation about your exact training needs. Okay, so yeah, that's it from the Siebel Hub side. So we had a great Siebel Friday again. Thanks to you for joining, and thanks to Duncan, Brian, and Kerry from Oracle, and thanks to Nick for the great introduction to OAuth and REST. I enjoyed it very much. I hope you did too.